The red and blue strobes from 3 patrol units flashed across my windshield as I pulled into the gravel driveway of my lake cabin. My gut knotted into a hard ball the instant I caught sight of them. The tableau appeared like something out of a crime drama. Officers milling about, flashlights scanning the truck I had left there only 2 hours before. My truck's bed, which was previously full of groceries, camp equipment, and more than $2,000 worth of tools and supplies, was now bare. The crunch of gravel beneath the boots of the officers reverberated through the chill air, and standing directly in the center of it all, with her arms crossed like some appointed sheriff, was Patricia Greenwood, the notorious HOA president from the house across the street. Patricia stood there in her bright blue power suit, the kind of outfit that screamed authority even when it didn't exist. Her hair was so perfectly styled it seemed like the breeze itself didn't dare mess with it. When she spotted me, her face lit up with the kind of smug satisfaction that only comes from believing you've finally won. "There he is," she snapped, her high voice cutting through the air as she pointed a manicured finger at me. "Officers, that's him. That's the man who's been stealing from our community. I caught him red-handed with stolen goods, and I've already secured the evidence." One of the officers, a tall man with the measured presence of a man who'd seen too much foolishness in his years, turned toward me. His badge said Sergeant Miller. "Sir," he stated flatly, "do you own this property?" "Yes, officer," I answered, trying to keep my voice steady as my pulse hammered in my ears. "This cabin belonged to my uncle. I inherited it about 6 months ago. That truck is registered in my name, and everything that was in it I purchased for myself this morning. Costco and Home Depot. I still have the receipts." Patricia's face turned pink to purple. "He's lying," she snapped, pointing. "And me once more. This property is owned by the Maple Grove HOA. I've been president for 8 years. I know every inch of this territory. He's been squatting here, stockpiling supplies, likely operating some sort of illicit enterprise." I tightened my jaw. I'd seen it coming for weeks. 3 weeks earlier, I'd started spending weekends at the cabin, trying to restore what my uncle had left behind. The place was peaceful, sitting on 2 acres of lakefront, just outside the official HOA boundary. But the first time Patricia saw me drive by with lumber in my truck, she came charging down her driveway in her high heels like she was chasing down a fugitive. "Excuse me," she'd shouted, gesturing wildly as I brought my speed to a halt. "Where do you think you're going with all that?" "Just up to my cabin," I said, attempting to remain courteous. "Working on it at the weekends." Her nose crinkled like she'd discovered something that had just turned smelly. "What cabin? There are no sanctioned buildings beyond this point. Anything west of Elm Street is subject to HOA rule, and I most assuredly hadn't given permission for any new development." That was when it dawned on me that Patricia Greenwood resided in her own personal fantasy reality, a reality where her HOA authority stretched as far as her ego would permit. I'd even gone so far as to present her with my property deed and certified survey map, clearly delineating the HOA line a quarter-mile east of my property. She'd glanced at them like they were some cheap forgery. "Maps can be faked," she'd scoffed. "I'll be keeping an eye on you." And she kept her word. Every Friday, like clockwork, I'd catch her standing at the edge of her property, binoculars in one hand, clipboard in the other, scribbling notes and taking pictures. One night, while I was unloading boxes of water and canned goods, she yelled across the street, "Awful lot of supplies for one guy. What's the idea? Starting an apocalypse bunker? Or perhaps operating an illegal Airbnb?" I ignored her, but she didn't get the idea. Next, she began posting fake violation notices on my truck windshield, stating non-compliance with HOA bylaws. Then came the phone calls, county inspectors, zoning officials, even the sheriff's office, all triggered by Patricia's endless stream of complaints. Each time, the result was the same. She had no authority over my land. Things came to a boil last Friday. I'd done my biggest supply run yet, stocking up for the winter. The truck was piled high, generator, propane tanks, canned food, tools, blankets, even a new chainsaw. More than $2,000 worth of crap. I was driving by Patricia's house when she stepped into the road, and I had to slam on the brakes. "This is ridiculous," she snapped, scowling into the rear of my truck. No decent homeowner requires this much gear. You're hoarding, or selling, or doing something illegal. Patricia, I groaned. I've explained 1,000 times this land isn't in your HOA. The edge stops at Elm Street. My cabin's a half-mile down from there. She flashed a cold smile. We'll see about that. The board votes next week to expand our jurisdiction to cover all the properties that can be reached by our roads. When it goes through, you'll have to get my permission for each nail you drive. I wanted to laugh. You can't annex private property with a vote by the neighbors. But I didn't bother to explain. It was dark, I was exhausted, and I just wanted to leave her standing in the road, planning her next move. The next day, I woke up early and set to work installing shelving in the storage area. About noon, I decided to go into town and get some lunch and pick up some additional supplies. I left the truck sitting in the driveway, half unloaded. That was my error. When I returned 2 hours later, the flashing lights and bare truck bed spoke volumes. Patricia had finally crossed the line. The sergeant was still questioning me when I pulled out my phone. "Officer," I said, scrolling through my security app, "I think this will set everything straight." I had placed cameras around the property weeks prior, following Patricia's initial bout of harassment. The video played on my phone, dated and as clear as day. Patricia's white Lexus driving directly into my driveway. She emerged, glancing cautiously around, then began to unload my truck, box by box, packing everything into her vehicle. 6 trips. She even wiped her brow at one point, hot but determined. Each second recorded in high definition, including her license number and her face. The look on the sergeant's face changed in an instant. Confusion gave way to keen perception. "Ma'am," he said softly, "you told dispatch you saw this guy stealing from his neighbors. You said you stopped him and took stolen items as evidence." Patricia stuttered, her bravado breaking. "Well, he was clearly fibbing about them being his. See all that gear? Regular folks don't purchase in bulk like that unless they're doing something illicit." The sergeant's tone fell an octave, menacing and steady. "So, let me get this straight. You thought it a good idea to invade his property, take stuff from his car, and hold it as evidence of a crime you fabricated? I was safeguarding the community." "Get lost," she snapped, her voice rising to a panicked tone. "Ma'am," another officer interrupted, "we already verified the records. This cabin doesn't belong to your HOA. You had no authority to touch anything here." I dug up my receipts and handed them over. "All purchased this morning. Dates and times match." The sergeant nodded curtly. "Jenkins, Rodriguez, take Miss Greenwood home and retrieve the stolen goods. Ma'am, you're going back with all the things you stole." Patricia's bravado collapsed. "Stolen? I didn't steal anything. I was protecting evidence. I have authority." "Not here, you don't," the sergeant shot back. "What you do have are 2 felony charges, filing a false police report and felony theft." Then followed the most satisfying hour of my life. I followed the police convoy to Patricia's spotless house, where my equipment sat stacked neatly in her garage as if she'd been going to store it. Her husband opened the door, his face paling as the officers explained. Patricia attempted each desperate excuse she could muster. She was defending the community, believed the cabin was vacant, thought the goods were stolen, even asserted HOA regulations provided her with emergency authority. Each failed. "Every item goes back," the sergeant advised when she attempted to dispute a box of canned food. "Unless you can show it's yours, it goes back." Half of the neighborhood showed up by then. Folks hissed, recorded, and gawked while the powerful HOA president was revealed for what she truly was. I even saw a couple of board members among the onlookers, faces agog and embarrassed. As the final box was packed back into my truck, the sergeant addressed Patricia with his citation book. "Miss Greenwood, you're being cited for theft of property worth more than $2,000, a felony in this state. Also for making a false 911 call." Patricia's legs collapsed, and she clung to her Lexus for support. "A felony? But I'm the president of the HOA. I was just trying to assist." "You can tell that to the judge," the sergeant replied icily. "The prosecutor will determine whether it remains a felony or is reduced to a misdemeanor. Either way, you're facing hefty fines and potential time behind bars. Hey, one of the board members, Janet, a no-nonsense, smart woman, came forward. Patricia, she said icily, we're having an emergency meeting tonight. You've embarrassed this whole community. I'll be requesting that you're removed as president immediately. And then the coup de grace. An officer approached, reading for his notepad. Ma'am, records indicate this isn't your first violation. 2 previous citations for false report. 1. For harassment. The prosecutors go and notice a pattern. Patricia's face folded up entirely. The coolness, the smugness gone. She muttered something about her needing her lawyer and began to stumble back towards the house. Her husband remained behind, completing the paperwork, his face a blend of shame and incredulity. The sergeant gave me his card. Be by Monday to file a complete report, he said. With her value and her background, she's at a serious risk. Felony theft in and of itself could draw a 5-year sentence and a $10,000 fine. Through the doorway spoke Patricia's cracked voice. 5 years? $10,000. Then the door slammed home. That noise sounded definitive, like the slamming of a long, arduous chapter. Patricia Greenwood's time as queen of the Maple Grove HOA was finally finished. As the police cars pulled away, their taillights fading into the dark road, the quiet finally returned to the lake. The same silence I'd been chasing from the start. No shouting, no threats, no clipboard queen marching across the gravel. Just wind through the trees and the low hum of crickets. I stood by my truck, seeing the shimmering of the cabin lights on the water, and for the first time in months, I was at peace. Patricia's house across the street was in complete darkness. The then proud HOA banners that she hung outside her house were missing, and instead, there was the silence of nothing, no rumors, no lectures, no fake authority. The board took away her title on the same evening. Word got around quickly, and by breakfast time, all the homeowners in Maple Grove knew precisely what she'd done. Some even visited the following day to apologize for failing to intervene sooner. It turned out that I wasn't her first victim, just the first to get brave and fight back. They informed me that she'd bullied half the neighborhood for many years, using the HOA as her own kingdom. But kingdoms crumble quickly when truth strikes harder than fear. I spent the following days doing what I had come here to do, mending my uncle's cabin, mending the dock, and hauling firewood. Every knock of the hammer felt like taking back a little more of the peace she'd attempted to steal. Go figure, I didn't even need to press charges. The sheriff's office did it for me. False reporting, theft, trespassing, all supported by camera video and a dozen witnesses. They told it would take a few months, but justice already had momentum. Occasionally, the ultimate revenge is not revenge. It's peace. So if you ever stand before an HOA bully who believes his clipboard makes him a cop, remember this. Truth doesn't require permission. It just requires evidence. And ultimately, after the noise has abated and the lights go down, the only thing louder than their lies will always be your silence. This is Neighbor Wars HQ, where each fence line has a story.